There we go. Okay.
Okay, well, we're live. Hey, so good to see you. It is Tuesday today, and we're going to be working on a couple more blade things today. Last week we worked on doing some parry stuff. This week I wanted to work on some hitting stuff. So you don't specifically need any special equipment. You can do this empty-handed. You can do it with a stick in your hand. If you've got your fencing sword, you can do it with your fencing sword. So that's up to you. I have a target set up today that here, come on over, let's take a look. So what I've done is I've taken a fencing jacket. Hopefully you don't have one of these at home. That's fine. But I've put it onto a pillow. I mean, this is a body pillow size thing. It's a hitting bag. But if you just have a regular pillow, you can put that in a jacket, and then you put the back of the jacket over the back of a chair so it'll kind of not move around too much, and you can hit that. Otherwise, you could probably use your own creativity to figure out a hitting target, but you just need something with padding in it and then a jacket so that you don't punch holes in whatever it is that you're hitting. But we'll get to that later. Right now, we need to do our cardio. So I'm going to do some running in place for, 2 minutes. We're going to do a couple things for a minute or two, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, depending on how we feel. Got a packed day, so we want to make sure we get all this stuff in. So one thing I wanted to talk about today, which we talked about a little bit yesterday on Sam's live stream, is the different processes inside your body that go to work when you start exercising. So for example, you have a aerobic system, and then you have 2 different anaerobic systems. And what that means is like with oxygen and without oxygen. So aerobic is usually longer term activity where your body is going to be producing its own energy to deliver power to your muscles. But that system takes a while to come online, like 20 minutes in some cases, for that to be in full swing. So if you're running a marathon, not a big deal. You're going to be at it for several hours. So having to warm up for 10, 15 minutes or so before a 3-hour-long event, not a big deal. But those other 2 systems, the 2 anaerobic systems, those are what come into play before that system is fully powered on. So, for example, when you are sitting in a chair and you stand up, and if you do that, let's say 10 times, on a scale of 1 to 10, that'd probably be barely a 1, at least for most of you who are getting up and going to fencing class. For some, that is a very difficult thing, but for most of us, barely registers on the scale of difficulty. But that entire process is anaerobic. Your body is producing that energy without engaging the aerobic system. And so that type of fitness is something that's really, really important in those shorter intervals. So like the sprinting type of fitness rather than the marathon running kind of fitness. But for fencing, you gotta have both. Okay, so that's all for our cardio. So my heart rate is beginning to rise, and that's what we want. We want our heart rate to start to climb, because that's when your aerobic system is starting to wake up and start coming online. We want to get that going. Okay, so we're going to do some sweeps. A crowd favorite, and mine for sure. So our leading leg is straight, our trailing leg is bent, and we're engaging ourselves in a hamstring stretch. So I'm going down, sweep through, and I come back up. And I do the same thing on the other side. So I go down and up, down and up. I'm keeping my lower back nice and straight, just bending at the hips, not bending my back, as much as possible. Okay, a tiny bit of fluctuation in your lumbar area is fine, but it shouldn't be the primary focus of that stretch. Okay, so with one of the most interesting things that so to share, I watched a seminar online on Monday, so yesterday, and they were talking about this, like aerobic, anaerobic. The whole thing revolved around your internal metabolism. So, so for example, your mitochondria producing power, that's an aerobic process. But until those can kind of get going, you have these anaerobic processes that produce energy. And one of the most fascinating things I learned in that seminar was it makes sense, but your red blood cells, they don't have mitochondria in them. They can't produce any sort of oxygen. They can only carry oxygen. And so your body has to hunt and peck for it if oxygen production isn't, and oxygen distribution isn't up for those first couple minutes of exercise to still keep your red blood cells full of oxygen and moving things around. Time. Okay, cool. So anyhow, we're going to do some twists. So I'm going to show you two versions of this. You can do it standing or you can do it laying down. So the standing version, you're going to bend your knees, and then you're going to twist. You don't want your legs straight because you can get a lot more hip rotation with your legs straight. It's a little harder to do that with your legs bent. So you can twist this way. But what I'm going to show you is a different one, where this one, if you've got lower back problems, or if you have, if you get soreness in your lower back and your lumbar spine, this one is a little bit better for that. So what you do is you bend your knees like this, and then you're going to you're going to keep your legs together, and you're just going to fold your legs to one side, and I'm doing my best to keep my shoulders connected with the floor. And I'm not pushing. So you're going to have an urge to maybe shove your legs into the floor, but you don't want to do that. You want to let your legs move all with gravity. You don't want to be applying torsion between here and there. You want to let gravity do the work, because that's plenty to get a stretch in the lower back without causing damage. So I'm going to do a couple more of those. So you twist like this, and then you count maybe to about 10 or 8 or so, and then you come up, and then you do it on the other side. If you want to, you can reach away. So I'll do it on this side. So you can turn one way and then reach the other way. So if you're already on the floor, like your shoulders are flat on the ground and you've bottomed out your legs, I can't quite do that, but we'll pretend. You can then reach across once you've already bottomed out. You don't want to be doing both at the same time, but you want to bottom out first and then go. But for most of you, you won't need to do that. You can do the twist here, and then that'll be it. 'Cause even here, my shoulder's already trying to pop up to let my legs go all the way down. I don't want that. I want to keep my shoulders level. Okay, cool. All right, we're going to do a little yoga thing. We're going to do cat and cow, which is another lower back thing. This does a little bit different part of your lower back. But Tyler, why are you doing so much core and back stuff? Because we're going to do a lot of hitting, and you got to have all that put together. So you want to set up in what I believe we call tabletop yoga. So you got your hands under your shoulders, your knees, or under your hips, as best they can. And without moving your shoulders or your hips, you're going to, as much as you can. So you're going to bend your back down. So you're going to arch your back like this. I'm keeping my neck loose. I'm not cranking my neck back. And then I just do the other thing. So I want to turn my hips in, and so I'm curving my back up towards the ceiling by engaging my abs and pulling with my abs. That's how I'm getting this. So I'm like pushing the ground away from me, my hands and my knees, pulling with my stomach. All right, and then here, so I'm arching my back, and again, so this time I'm pushing my hands away, pushing my knees away, and now I'm pulling my hands and my knees together using my abs. So I pull, and now I push. Now I'm going to go back and pull again. Good. And I'm going to push them apart. And then come back to neutral. You can kind of shake everything out a little bit. Okay, cool. And so you can do that more on your own if you need a little bit more time doing that. But if you're doing that relatively actively, like you're really pulling your hands and knees together when you're curving down, and you're really pushing your hands and knees apart when you're going up, you're gonna get where you want to go faster than if you're just kind of like moving your back a little bit, not really paying attention to how those muscles are interacting with your arms and legs. Okay, so shoulder dislocations. You're gonna need a stick to do these. So a broom, a foil, anything that's long enough for you to do this thing. So a couple streams ago, we did these. This is a popular one among weightlifters who are, and I left out some very important information. Well, not very important, but I left out some information last time. This is just a little bit, it's like just 2.5 inches too short. So I left out some information about where this stretch hits last time, so I want to add that in here. One of the important things that happens in the stretch, particularly back here in this range where you're locking out way behind you, is it is a pectoral stretch along with being a shoulder stretch. So when you're going to here, when you are starting to hit resistance, where is that resistance coming from? Well, it's the front of your body. It's the only thing that can keep your hands from trying to go further together as anything on the front. You got to think about your body as a system of levers and rubber bands. And so if I'm back here and my hands don't want to stay together, what's pulling on them? What's trying to pull them apart? Muscles over here. So your pectoral fan up front, that's what you stretch back here. And then as you go through this, this is going to transfer from being shoulders. So what's opposite of here? Right now we've got our lats down here that are getting stretched out. So if you have really tight lats, you're going to have a hard time bringing your hands together. And then as we go pecs to the lats and then through. Now, if you have gigantic traps, that might also be a consideration where there's too much muscle in between your ear and your shoulder. And you're having a hard time bringing your hands together. If that's you, great. So Henry, you're watching. That might be the case also. Okay, we'll do like 3 more. So we'll go back. Good. And I gotta keep my stomach engaged, especially when I get to here and it's starting to pull on my pectoral fan. If my stomach's loose, it's gonna let things just kind of flop, which we don't want. So we want to keep engaged in the abs as we go through that pectoral stretch way in the back. Okay, cool. So it's time now for us to do, I think I just accidentally started, yeah I did. Reset, All right, it's not time for that quite yet. We're going to do a little bit of footwork, so we're going to start with some advances and retreats, just to get our legs warmed up, and we'll go through the things. Okay, so if you don't have a lot of space, you can do one advance and one retreat. If you have more space, you can do more advances and then more retreats. That's up to you. All right, so I'm going to, just to start, I'm going to do one of each. And I'm going to keep my tempo really consistent. Best I can, at least. Lord knows I can barely count, so if I can't see my fingers, I have a real hard time counting. But if you want, you can do more than one advance, more than one retreat as you go. For extra challenge, you can do this a little bit lower, or you can bring the tempo up and try and keep everything stable. You want to imagine that you are a big glass of water and you're trying to not spill a bunch of it out while you move. So I'm trying to keep all the liquid in. You probably will notice as the video goes on, you're going to see me doing some like small things like moving my shoulders, moving my head. All those things are small, 0th rep stuff. We talked about that 2 weeks ago, I think, is when we talked about the 0th rep. And that's all part of that process of like setting yourself up for a correct repetition. So anytime I notice I'm not ready to do the next repetition correctly, I make a quick adjustment and I make it right. So I'm not doing bad reps as often as possible. Okay, so we're going to do a lunge and recover. So just doing that back and forth. We're not going to worry about recovering right away. Normally we're trying to like go in, out, in, out, in, out. But for this, we're actually going to work on doing our lunge and feeling like we're in the exact right spot before we recover. So we're not going to just absent-mindedly just do a bunch of lunges. We're going to do one at a time and make them right. So we go lunge, everything looks good, okay, recover. And then set up, lunge, make everything right, and recover. And you go at your own speed. You might go slower than me. You might go faster than me. And something that I'm feeling when I do this is when I get into the lunging position, I'm pulling my feet together. I'm not just kind of like falling down. I'm staying relatively rigid below my belly button, and then everything above my belly button is loose. So everything up here, this is all loose. Everything down here is active. So go, boom, lunge, active legs, active legs. So I don't want to be too loose, or else I'm just going to be completely wobbly all the way through. I don't want to be overly tight, because then you don't go anywhere because you're flexing too hard. But you do want to have some muscles active to keep you rock solid, stable. Okay, now we're going to do 2 advances, 1 retreat, and also 2 retreats, 1 advance. So if you got room, you can do a couple reps of 1, 2, 3 in a row. If you don't have a ton of space, like you've locked yourself in your bathroom to get away from your family or something, fine. Then you just do 2 steps, 2 advances, 1 retreat, and then 2 retreats, 1 advance. So if you have enough room to do 3 steps, you're good to go. Okay, so we'll get started with that. So 1, 2, 3. Let's switch to doing a couple in a row. So I do have space, so I'm going to use it. Another thing that you can modify with this, you can take larger retreats. So even though I'm taking 2 advances in one retreat over and over again, I can make it so I don't gain any ground. This is excellent practice for doing distance control. So knowing how far you've gone and being able to vary that type of space manipulation. Same thing the other way. I can do 2 little retreats and then a larger advance. Makes you really accurate with your space. You know, oh, that step this size is the same as 2 of those. 1 is equal to 2. But I'm going to go back to just doing all the same size because I have room, so might as well use that room. Okay, and time. So now we're going to do advanced lunge, recover, and then we're going to do retreat lunge, recover. So kind of sort of the same amount of forwards and backwards steps, but not exactly. Because we're using lunge instead of an advance. So we're going to do add advance lunge. And if you want to keep working on that lunging position, making sure your feet are in the right spot, back leg is straight, front knee is nice bend in it, but you're not getting your knee way past your ankle, and then keeping everything above your belly button, nice and loose, relaxed, before you come back. Do the retreat lunge the same way, so advanced lunge, retreat lunge. And there's kind of 2 schools of thought with this kind of practice. I mean, for some coaches, they swear by teaching their students to freeze in the lunge and practice getting the form right. Some coaches think that it's blasphemy to let your students do anything that doesn't resemble fencing footwork that you use in the real world. Well, so from a pedagogy standpoint, you have to ask yourself, what's the objective? Every single exercise you're ever going to do is going to be something that is related to fencing, but not fencing exactly. There's no way to recreate high-stakes fencing practice. It's not possible. You can't do it. It's not possible. You can get close to doing real fencing, real tournament fencing at high stakes in practice, but it's still not the same thing. Unless you literally go to a convention center with 200 other random strangers to practice fencing. You see where I'm going with this? So like, there's no way that we can practice here in this space what you're going to do at a NAC. We can do things that are almost the same, that are related, that you can draw on when you get out there. So whether or not you pause in the lunge, I mean, it depends on what you're trying to practice. If you're trying to practice doing continuous attacks where you recover right away, yeah, this is terrible. If you're trying to practice landing in a correct position so that you have enough repetitions of that built up so that the technique's going to be good, then yeah, that can be good. So in any case, I have a hard time taking medicine from someone when they say, this is the only way and all other ways have no value. I have a hard time with that when it comes to like exercise stuff. Unless they have really good evidence, then I can say okay. All right, so the last thing we're going to do leap lunge and leap recover. Whoa! So the first one is something you're probably familiar with. The second one, not as much. So I'll show you, for those who are not familiar with the leap lunge, what you do is you do a regular lunge, but you're using your back leg to push off more than you normally would for a shallower lunge that is not as committed. Oftentimes you'll see people, when they do a lunge, they're going to go somewhere when they do it. This is pretty normal. Most fencers are fencing energetically enough at a tournament. This happens naturally, but it's good to practice that because it's extra conditioning. So we're going to do a few leap lunges. We'll maybe do a minute of these. So the objective is to push hard enough that you go a little longer, but I still land correctly. And for these, since we're optimizing the back leg movement, we're not going to worry too much about bouncing right out and recovering, although you can if you want. You can see how my arm is kind of pulling the rest of me into the lunge. I'm not doing like some sort of like 50-year-old fencing lunge, but I am getting my arm moving, and then the rest of me follows. So accelerating the blade and bodies follow. Okay, so now we're going to do leap recover. Whew. Bunch of anaerobic activity right there. So a leap recover, you're going to go into a shallow lunge. From here, you're going to recover hard enough that you can actually come back extra. So I'm pulling with my back leg to accomplish this. You might be tempted to use your front leg. So you're like, oh, I pushed to do the leap lunge, so I should push to do the leap recovery. And you could. Yeah. You can do that. But most of the recovery is not done from the front leg. It's done from pulling and squeezing from the back leg. It's this clamping movement that gets you out of the recovery the most. So your back leg's the star of the show, going in and out. Your front leg's got to help, but it's not going to be the driving force that like gets you way, way out of that lunge. It's this squeeze. See, look. So this is going to start me off just the same way as your front leg starts you off in the lunge, but your back leg takes over and does the work. So I'm here. So I'm pulling. That's how I get my super recovery. So go back over here. So you go into my lunge. Stop. Oops. Okay, and time. So now we're going to do some hitting stuff. So we've got 5 things planned. So if you have a dummy set up at home, you can use that. But I'm going to do the first little bit without, not the first little bit. I'm going to do this first part with the dummy, just so you can see how the blade interacts with the target. But you don't have to be actually hitting something. For most of the principles, we're talking about to kind of stick. But if you want to set something like this up, pillow, fencing jacket, drape that over the back of the chair. So you got the chair back behind the pillow, jacket over that to kind of keep everything together. You tie the jacket arms behind the chair back, and that'll keep it relatively stable. You can make one with like I think you can use like a coat hanger as well It's not like a chintzy plastic one that's going to snap in half if you look at it the wrong way. If you have like a good wood hanger or something, that might work. But talk to your family before you start just rifling through closets trying to find stuff. But even if you don't have something to hit, that's fine. Okay, so we're going to start with just basic thrusting stuff. So there's a couple different things to talk about there. So there's a few different ways you can achieve a thrust. And so we'll talk about like a basic one and then maybe a little bit more modern one. So at a basic level, to achieve a thrust, you drive the elbow forwards and upwards, and that will get you your thrust. Point doesn't need to go up. The point actually needs to kind of stay where it is for the most part. So as my elbow is going up, my point actually is not. So that means that there has to be some sort of rotation in here to keep that stable. Because if I don't change anything in the fingers and the wrist, my forearm is going to follow my elbow up. So in order to keep the point down, my fingers are going to have to bring the point down while my arm goes up. So I'm going to have to let the point drop down at the same rate or a similar rate to my hand going up in order to keep everything in front of the target I want to hit. So this is a pretty classic way to do things. Not going to rock the boat there. A more modern way of doing it is to have your point higher. And so your point is above the median line where your thrust is going to end, and your elbow is below that line. It's fairly proportional. So my thrust is going to end around shoulder level. So my point is about as high above my shoulder as my elbow is below the shoulder. So then I get this cantilever action where my point comes down at the same rate that my elbow goes up, more or less. And then that allows me to stick the point directly in front of me without having to think too much. One of the benefits is I don't need really good fingers to do it this way because the movement of the forearm is going to help me drive the point in where I want it to. But you can see if I'm not paying close attention, my point's just going to go all over the place. It's going to go down here, it's going to go up here. So you do need your fingers to do this more modern technique in a way that's going to make you happy. You do need fingers still. It's just a lower barrier of entry skill-wise to do this one versus doing this one. Now, I do like this one better than just the straight thrust in. However, if you're an épée fencer, this one is still the standard. This is it. You don't want the bottom of your wrist hanging out the bottom of your guard in épée. That's bad news. So in épée, this is still, the classic is still the standard, the gold standard. Whereas in foil, you'll see a little bit more aggressive hand stances. And then you'll also see a super modern kind of guard that's developed in foil in particular that looks a little more like a saber guard. So this is like point up. You've got like the fingers driving the point up. So I'm not achieving this by bending my wrist up. I'm raising my point just with my fingers, see? And so it has a lot of the same benefits of this guard while still being able to have your fingers lower. So it allows you to have the point be a little bit more portable without having to like move your hand up and down. So the hand gets to be more stable while still reaping the benefits of this high hand guard.
Can I get a quick close-up on the hand movement and position on that last one?
Yeah, come on in. So here's
I'll just zoom right in here.
Yep, so there's the classic hand position. So you can see there's going to be, I'm going to apply some tension to these fingers back here as the hand raises. So that's what it's going to look like when I raise my hand. And that will allow me to stick the point. So I'm here for the modern grip, and I'm going to apply. So you can see the tape when I'm on guard. Oops. And then now you can't. So now you see it. Oops. Now you don't. Now you see it. Now you don't. Okay. And then the high hand guard, you're going to see that this tape's going to be fairly visible the whole way through. So here I am. So I'm not using my fingers nearly the same amount. I'm using them some, but I'm not using them quite to the same extent as I was with the direct thrust. Okay, and then the hybrid guard, where I've got my point up, but my hand down, you're going to see a similar finger movement to the modern one, or to the classic one. Okay, cool. So those are three kind of basic ways that you can go from on guard into a hit. All right, so now we're going to look at the two hitting positions up top, and then we're going to look at the two hitting positions down low. So saber fencers are going to be very familiar with these two hits. These two hits up here are going to be more of a foil specialty, but as a saber fencer, being able to hit either to this side or this side is useful depending on whether you're fencing against a righty or a lefty. So against a right-handed fencer, coming way over here doesn't make a lot of sense. But against a lefty, it totally can. Because if you're hitting over here against a lefty, well, parry 5 is the lowest by their hand. And so if you're aiming in here instead of over here against the lefty, suddenly you're going to have a little bit more clearance for longer through your head cut. So something to keep in mind. I don't think you should be cutting directly diagonal, but tweaking where you're throwing your cut into, whether it's the left or right side of the head, has value. Okay, cool. So in any case, so high line, so if I'm hitting in front of my rear shoulder, so if my hand is, so anything on this side, generally, we're going to be turning our hand over. Anything on this side, we're going to turn our hand up. So this side is going to be hand down, this side is going to be hand up. Is that always true? No. But is it true for this basic stuff? Yes. So if I'm hitting across my body, my hand is going to be down, about 45 degrees offset. So this is how I want to be hitting the front shoulder on a right-handed fencer. I won't utilize this much on a left-handed fencer, but on a right-handed foil fencer for sure. So I'm going to turn my hand over like I'm doing parry 4, and I go into the hit. So I go from a parry 4 into a hit. And I'm not following the line of the blade so much, like I'm not in a classic 4 and doing a direct thrust. That's not good. In the game these days, it's good in epee, but it's not good in foil. So my point is a little wider than a classic 4, and then I'm going to just drop it in. So I go 4, and then drop. And I'm going to hit them right in that shoulder area. Okay, cool. So now the other side, if I'm versus a lefty, and I want to hit them on the front shoulder, I have to do it with my palm up. So I have to start from a parry 6 position over here. So I'm going to go from that parry 6 position, my point's a little wider, and then I'm going to bring it in as I go to hit. So I'm out here, and I go to hit. I'm here, oops, get in there. And I go to hit. So I'm out there, You know why I missed twice? My fingers were too tight. That's why I missed. So if my fingers are loose, they're going to go right in there. So if I'm not holding super tight, my wrist can move a couple degrees and help me out. Boom. I keep everything tight, I'm not going to get what I need. So if I tighten up too much in here, not going to happen. Okay, cool. So we got our hit on the shoulder there against the lefty. We did our hit front 4 position onto the shoulder against a righty. So you can see how doing it facing, the parry 4 goes into that shoulder against a righty, and parry 6 goes into the shoulder against a lefty. So each basic core parry position that I like to teach plugs directly into a hit. So I teach 4, 6, 8, and 1, actually, as our kind of base set of parries. We didn't talk too much about parry 1 yet. It's all right, but I wouldn't call it core. I'd say like 4, 6, and 8 are much more important than 1. 1 is like 4th place in the list of things you need to know. But these 4 hits, because of their utility against a right-handed and a left-handed person, that's where things start to get a little bit more important. But Tyler, wouldn't there also be utility for 1 against a right-handed fencer versus a left-handed fencer, or vice versa? Yes, but here's the key. With parrying, you're protecting you and where someone wants to hit on you. And so the main places people are going to hit you in foil are on the shoulder, in the middle, or down low over there. Those are the 3 main places people are going to come in. It's rare that someone's going to come in low on the inside over here. The number of times you're going to need this parry in a normal fencing circumstance are much lower than you're going to need to lock something out on the outside over here, lock something out on the inside in the middle, or lock something out low on the outside over there. Those are the 3 main threats that you're going to encounter. So there you go. But the 3 main threats, you got to know those against right and left-handed fencers, which equals 4 positions. The shoulder positions are. Oops.
Yep.
All right. Cool. So we did our high line hits. We went from 4 to shoulder, and we went from 6 to shoulder. So now, after all that talk, we're going to do our low line hits. So we know how to go from a low line position into a hit. So we're going to start from parry 8, which is down and it's protecting your flank over here. So it's not across the body. So 8 is where your elbow is in an on guard position, but your point is low. All right. So it follows a lot of the same rules as hitting from up high. So I'm going to raise into the position, but not a lot. I'm not going to be raising way up here from 8. You can, but that's more complicated. We want to hit this bottom corner. So this is hitting flank against the lefty. So I'm hitting someone behind their elbow or under their elbow if their lame goes down that far. So here I am. I go from parry 8 to the hit. So I'm in parry 8, I raise the point and hit. Just the same as I have to drop the point and hit from high line. I have to raise the point and hit from low line. The other day, on stream, we talked about lunging depth with a low line hit. And when you hit low line, the lower your lunge is, the higher your hand can be. So if I want to be further away from someone when I hit them low line, if I'm in a deeper lunge, I get to put my arm out more. You can see as I get taller, I have to get my hand lower to hit the same target spot. So the lower I can get to a point, the better. So here I get to extend relatively straight. I can make a really good low line threat if I can lunge them. It's risky. You don't want to do it all the time. But if you know that they're vulnerable there, they have a really slow parry 8 and they're left-handed, great. Now I know what I must do. Okay, a couple more. So we go parry 8 and riposte. Parry 8 and riposte. Parry 8 and riposte. I'm going to go a little lower. Parry 8, riposte. Okay. Final thing for low line, we're going to go from the mirrored position. So that parry 1 I was going on and on about. So parry 8, you got your hand up over here. Parry 1 is the same geometry, just reversed. So So I have my hand down over here. So this is a low parry one. You can do a high parry one up here if you're very close to the other person, but that's a more advanced level thing. But I find that doing kind of a pseudo parry one over here works pretty well. You've got parry 4, and you've got this over there. 7 works okay from this position, but I found that riposting can be a little slow from there, whereas from here you can carry on a little easier. But I'm happy to talk about that stuff if anyone has questions. So what we're going to do, we're going to turn our hand over like we're doing a parry 4, but we're going to have our point low instead of our point high. So we're going to let the point go low, and then we raise it up to make the hit. So this is against a right-handed fencer. Since I'm right-handed, we're doing it right to right. So I turn my hand across the body, like I'm doing parry 4, except my point's low, and then I raise the point, thrust it and hit, low. So we start from the guard, we go parry, thrust. And then you go parry, thrust, parry, thrust, parry, thrust, parry, thrust, parry, thrust, parry, thrust, parry, thrust. Oops. Get in there. Bent my sword backwards by accident. Alright, parry, thrust, parry, thrust, parry, thrust, parry, thrust. Okay, great. So we're going to do something called the 4 corners drill. So we've done all the component pieces of it already. We're just going to kind of put it all together into a system. So I'm going to show you a parry, and you're going to put your hand in the same place. So you're going to threaten the line where my parry is for now, just for the warm-up, and then we're going to do it a little differently, but just so we get used to seeing where my blade is and relating to it. So if I'm over here on your right-hand side, you want to put your blade over on your right. So it won't look like me exactly. If I'm doing it left-handed and you're right-handed, it will look very similar. So when I'm doing it left-handed, it's going to look almost the same. But if I'm doing it right-handed, it's going to look different. Now, if you're left-handed, you're going to look the same as me when I do it right-handed, but you're going to look different than me when I'm doing it with my left hand. So just think about if I'm using the same hand as you, it's what your opponent would look like, whereas if I'm using the other hand, it's going to look like a mirror image of what you look like. Okay, so I'll start left-handed since there's probably more righties in the audience. So we're going to start in parry 6. So we're going to go to 4. We're going to go to 1. We're going to go to 4. Go to 1. We're going to go to 8. Go to 1. Go to 4. Go to 6. We go to 8. We go to 6. We go to 4. We go to 6. We go to 8. We go to 1. And 4. And 1. And 8. And 6. 4. 6. 8. 6. 4. 8. 1. 6. Those diagonal transitions are pretty tough. So going from 1 to 6, and from 8 to 4. But being able to do those, if you've fenced with me, especially in foil, you know that those diagonal transitions are my favorite thing to do often, and they're one of the hardest things for people to figure out that you're doing if they're not used to. So now I'm doing it right-handed for a second, so that's what your opponent would look like. So let's say I'm over here. I'm on the march. I'm coming down the strip, and I'm threatening here. And then all of a sudden, I do a diagonal transition. Now, if you sweep low to parry 8 against this, well, I'm going to just transition up here. Now you have to go from 8 all the way up to there to try and stop me. And all I have to do is just draw this diagonal line from here to there. And if you try and stop it the other direction, so if you try and come across it a different way, I can still draw that diagonal line and just go around the blade the other way. So it's just tracing a line, avoiding where your guard's going diagonally away. Your guard goes that way, my sword goes that way. And I just have to jump over wherever your blade is. So, cool. So now, since I'm doing it right-handed, you want to match where my guard is. So you should be across your body right now in parry 4, if you're right-handed. And then as we go over here, you should be in parry 6, there. Now you're in parry 8, or if you're lefty, you're in parry 1. Okay, so now parry 1, or parry 8 if you're left-handed. So we've got 4, 1, 8, 6, 8, 1, 4, 1, 8, 6. Okay, so now we're going to do the actual four corners drill. So as I alluded to with those diagonal transitions, wherever my blade is, you're going to put your hand in the opposite corner of my target. So if I go down to where my hip is, you want to be putting your point up in this part of my target. So if I travel like this, well, guess what? You're going to want to transition. You want to imagine my blade as a giant paintbrush, and you have to try and put your blade where I've already painted. So you don't want to go through where I'm painting. You want to go around and place it where I've already been. So if I'm up here in 6 and I'm transitioning down to 1, you need to get up here by going under my hand. So I'm going to 1, you got to go around it. Good. Now if I go across, you don't want to get caught in here, so you have to go over my hand and then end up over here. So you're up here. By transition, easy. You just go over. Right now, you're spending time in high line, so you're in this corner, now you're in this corner. Uh-oh, now you're in this corner. Now you're in this corner. You're over there, over here. Oh, now you go this way up to here. Over to here, over to here, over to here. Oh, got to go under the hand to there. Over the hand to here. See how when I'm doing these diagonal transitions, this is a little bit tougher. So you're down here. Now I go here, you got to go over and up to the target. So under to 8, over up to here. Okay? So now I'm here. So you're still, you want to drop it down to here. So here, and here, and here, and here, 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 there, there. Okay, I'm going to do left-handed for a little bit. So we're starting down here. So we go up to there. Good. Now we go down to here. We go over there. And then over here. Up to there. Over there. Over here. Down to there. Over here. Over there. Up here. Over here. This is frying my brain, by the way. This is silly. And then around. Good. And then down there. Down here. Up here. Up there. Down here. Down there. Up to here. Good. Okay. Ah, man, that hurt my neurons. They're
So,
really sore.
like the conducting exercises some of my friends in college would do when they were learning to conduct, have to learn to move both hands independently.
Ah, yeah, being able to keep time. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay, last bit here. We're yeah, we're about out of time for today. But something you can think about is when I'm doing these transitions, you generally are going to be hitting at some point. You're not going to be just endlessly looking for target. But so anytime I make one of those transitions, that's an opportunity to hit me. We did it all standing still, so there wasn't really much physical difference between me doing like this versus doing that. But when your opponent's doing these transitions between 4 and 6, and doing low line actions 1, 8, 7, whichever one, you're going to have to think about which one of those presents an opportunity. Anytime someone makes a large transition and you can put your point into the opposite corner of someone's target, and you're ready to do so, the only X factor at that point becomes, how is their balance? So if they're unbalanced and changing lines in a way that you can see, and you can put your blade into the opposite corner of the target from where they're moving their blade, you're going to be in great shape. So we'll circle back to this on Thursday. We'll check out doing the hitting version of this drill. Okay, so that's it for now. So until we can see you again in person, we'll see you out here on the internet. So stay safe, stay hydrated, and see you next time. Bye.